talk about turf management and keeping a healthy lawn, one of the most important and critical things we do is mow. And so we want to ensure we're mowing at the correct height and frequency, but we also need good equipment. And so for today, we have in front of us a conventional rotary type push mower that most residential lawns are maintained with. And so some of the things we might want to look at as we're getting ready is let's just make sure it's running well. And so the first thing on checking is just give it an overall look. Are there any obvious signs of damage, particularly looking at different moving parts, cables. We want to make sure that if we have a bagger that we can find the bagger. Does it look like it can handle this season as well? Other common areas to consider are the condition of your pull cord. The last thing you want on your first mow is to pull that and find out that it's not able to handle the load. And then there's some other kind of engine maintenance things that this time of year is a great time to really check things out. Things like your air filter, if you have an oil filter on your machine. If you're examining the oil in your small engine, you'll pull the dipstick and first check to see, is there oil in there? Is the depth appropriate? Does it hit the right marks on the dipstick? You also want to examine it for the color. If it looks to be a little bit too dark, you might consider draining and then replacing with fresh oil. If it's not too dark and it's a little low, maybe just top it off. If you're going to go through the process, make sure you look for the manual on how to drain the engine oil. Look for a drain plug if it has one, and make sure that the oil meet the specs for that machine. Other engine items that could be of interest, the spark plug can sometimes be an issue, although for the most part we don't see that an annual need. But while you have the machine down, you might as well take a look. So remove the spark plug, visually inspect it for dark or spoiling kind of conditions. And then if you see a little bit of darkness, you might just use a wire brush to clean it. But otherwise, return the spark plug as you found it, and you should be good for another season. Perhaps maybe a more frequent consideration is looking at the condition of your blade. For most residential lawns these days, or mowers, they have a mulching blade. And on an annual basis, you can consider whether or not to grind the blade to freshen, make it sharper and good for the next season, or do you make a decision just to replace it? And I think that for most folks, if they don't have a full workshop with a grinder and aren't comfortable with those sort of activities, then there's nothing wrong with just buying new blades each year. If you're able to find a local shop that'll do it for an inexpensive cost, then that's also an option. One of the key issues with sharpening a blade is that you want to ensure that the blade is balanced so that it doesn't cause any uneven vibrations in the machine when you reinstall it. So when examining the blades to determine are they ready for the season, you'll want to make sure that they don't have any large nicks or pieces of metal missing. That'll be a good indication that you might want to consider just replacement. But if it's just kind of a dull edge and the overall body of the blade is still there, then you could certainly consider sharpening it. When you look at the price of a new blade for a single blade mower, replacement with a new blade is certainly a very viable option. If you're looking at something like a riding mower that might have multiple mower blades, mower decks, the cost could be a little bit more important there, and you may consider finding a shop that'll sharpen the ones you have. So although this is the most common type of mower you'll find in a residential setting, there are quite a few folks that either have acquired or hire the services of a reel type mower. And so these are more commonly associated with our golf course management crews and really allow for the mowing height to drop below 1 inch. And so if you are one of those folks, you also have some blades that could be inspected this time of year. Typically there's the reel itself can be inspected, looking for usually just overall dullness of the edge, and then the bed knife which sits below similarly can be inspected. And options are to either hire a proven shop to grind those for you, or do routine maintenance in the form of backlapping to kind of hone those edges again and get them ready for the new season. The air filters can come in several different shapes and sizes for really any kind of outdoor equipment though. Those are some of the things that we want to be inspecting, not just this time of year, but throughout the season. Make sure that they are free of debris and grass clippings. Removing those, use compressed air to kind of blow out any debris. It's a good practice. Something that hopefully you did at the end of the season last year in preparation for winterization, but certainly you want to give it a good look and make sure we're ready this time. If there is some physical injury or damage to the filter, you might consider replacement. So for those of you with a warm season lawn, so Bermuda grass in particular, it's very common that first mowing of the year would be what we call a spring scalping event. And so we'll set the mower maybe at the lowest setting or maybe just above the lowest setting to try to remove a lot of that dormant old growth and really allow the Bermuda to kind of get a quick jump start on this season. So if doing that, it can generate quite a lot of debris. And so in those cases, you really do want to think about where is that going to go. And so do you have a bag for that? In that case, bagging it and then hauling it off site is a very convenient way to do it. If you don't have a bagger, consider if it's a side discharge or where those end up being and how you're going to manage the clipping debris is very important. If considering using those down the road for something like compost, be aware that oftentimes there are some residual herbicides that can be a problem in compost if those are later going to be used in vegetables and similar crops. Once you've kind of gotten going, maybe you did the initial spring scalping at a low height, you'll want to return the mower to kind of a more normal, everyday mowing height that matches your grass species and your expectations for the lawn. Doing so with a mower like this is relatively straightforward. These tires are solid and there's no issues there. If you're dealing with a riding type mower, not only do you need to set the deck appropriately, but you want to ensure that your tire pressure meets the specs as well, because we can get not only the wrong height of cut, but an uneven height if our tires are inflated improperly. So for those that have something more like this zero-turn rotary ride-on mower, there are a lot of other moving parts and considerations when you're trying to prepare for the season. In many cases, it's probably best to have a service provider on hand to do a checkup, but if you do feel like you can handle the various activities, then some things to consider are looking at the mower deck itself. Look for pulleys, look for belts that might be wearing out. Be sure that if you didn't, again, in winterizing this, clean that area, go ahead and clean it out. Make sure everything looks good, looks secure. Things that are supposed to be moving are moving freely, and that sort of thing. You also are typically going to deal with a starter and a battery in these situations, and so what's the condition of my battery? Did I store it properly? Is it dead? Make sure you get a multimeter or a battery retainer on there and just see where it's at with the battery. This is the time to kind of make sure everything's ready to go. For a lot of mowers like this, a regular garden tractor type battery is easy to find and not a big deal. If you're dealing with something that has more of a full electric type mower, those sorts of batteries have the same kind of concerns, proper storage, and the like, but those are sometimes more difficult to acquire. You may have to buy them through a specialty vendor and are certainly more expensive. So hopefully with these tips you'll have everything you need to get off to a good start this spring.
We hope you enjoyed this video as part of our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. You can also find even more videos on the OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.